Hello, everybody. Today is Tuesday, December 2nd. My name is Miloš Krajčnik. This is Canuck News. I have a great story here for you today. Again, bit around the military, a little bit more about the military procurement and all of that. But what we're really going to be getting into, we have an opinion piece here. This fellow here, Murray Brewster, actually he writes pretty good articles. Going to get into this. He covers a couple of really neat, interesting details that I've been trying to touch up on several times regarding actual national strategy with our national defense. And then we have a Globe and Mail article that says Canada reaches deal to join EU military procurement. I think that's a very bad idea, and I try and elaborate on it a bit. So to get into it, Canada at the defense crossroads, the challenges of thinking long term, and this is really key, is actually that long term thinking, which we just seem to not have any of, to be honest. Everything is always reactionary. It's always our subs are old. We need to buy a whole bunch of brand new ones right now. Oh, we have 50-year-old planes, let's buy 88 F-35s. It doesn't, there's no systematic approach to being the best consistently or having very good equipment consistently, right? We just let everything decay and then we just revamp it 50 years later, right? That's not the way we should be doing anything, really, because you wouldn't do that with a business, right? And national defense is much more than just something commercial. There's always that industrial base that's tied to it, jobs and employment, as we saw that with the planes, with the Gripens, with the Saab Gripens that are being pushed. That's always a part of it. But the wider story is, how do you stop unfriendly nations from wanting to sabotage you, spying on you, and all of that? So it's a much wider story, right? Not obviously all of this military procurement is, we're looking at subs here, we're looking at planes there, but it's really a wider thing, right? There's always intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance that are also a part of all of this, and then you have the actual military procurement that goes on in the back end, right? But to get into this, what we're seeing here is, and that's basically what he goes into at the beginning. But like he says here, lost in all of the noise surrounding the minutiae, as well as the debate around jobs and economic benefits, have been some of the fundamental questions of national security and industrial policy that the federal government has been unwilling or unable to answer to this point. And that is 100% true. We've seen this over decades. What is the national defense strategy? What is our national defense strategy? It always seems that someone else is creating Canada's national defense strategy. Honestly, obviously, in World War II, we were still directly being controlled by the King of England, or the Queen. Actually, it was the King at the time. So we went to war kind of independently. We made the choice to go, but not really, to Europe. Okay. And then ever since that post-World War II, Cold War era, any conflict that we've gone into was a part of NATO. It was a part of side by side with the US. And we go to these conflicts, but are we actually going to them out of our own national interest? What is our national interest? We don't know I don't know if we know what our national interest is. Everything is always reactionary. It's always based on what somebody else is doing, right? And so that's kind of what this points out to, right? Especially with national defense, which is every serious nation takes its national defense extremely seriously. And I just going to bring back a point. Same way in Trump's first term, that he kicked out the Huawei CFO out of Canada. A procurement of telecommunications 5G networks that we were supposed to integrate across all of Canada, those Chinese ones. Trump said no, because it's a national security risk to the US. And then he forced blackface Justin Trudeau to actually arrest the CFO. I think she even got extradited afterwards. And so that's an actual serious approach to how to protect your national interests. And that's a part of their national defense. You know what I mean? That's not even like a national interest. That's national defense. So here we go. It says the two most pertinent questions facing the country, which is about to dump 82 billion approximately into rebuilding the military and the defense industrial base, can be distilled to this: what precisely do we expect the Canadian military to do in this new, arguably more dangerous world? And what are the key pieces of military hardware that should be built at home as a guarantee of our sovereignty? Exactly. And this is exactly what I've been talking about all the time, is the world is the way it is. It's new walls have been put up, right? It's not unipolar. It's not the U.S. against the Soviet Union or the West against the Soviet Union. And, you have this like very clear divide. Now there's things that are popping up on all sides, right? And the balance of power, I mean, it's not exactly even, but it's kind of getting there, right? So you can't be nonchalantly just procuring military equipment the way we've been doing thus far. We need to have a very serious approach to this. What is our spot in the world today, right? The world is way more dangerous. The Chinese have great intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. They honestly, their spy network is amazing. The Russians do what they do. The Israelis have an amazing spy network. The UK has an amazing spy network. And with all of that, you get the satellite intelligence as well. That is also key. You see India putting up more satellites in space as well. So everybody's rushing to have more eyes on the ground from up top, so that when they do get into an armed conflict, they have some kind of an upper hand, right? And this is really key, right? So it's, what do we need in our military for this world? And what are the key pieces of military hardware that need to be built at home as a guarantee? And that is key. What needs to be built at home as a guarantee of our sovereignty? Because that is the only way you actually have sovereignty, is if you're building your own military hardware. And I want to stress this again. This is what I keep saying. I know my comment section is always, it just blows up when it comes to military issues, military procurement. I am a advocate, and my only advocacy is for Canada building its own military hardware. We need to pick certain areas of our military that we need to manufacture on our own. And I think, this is just me, I think it needs to be in the maritime sphere. Any types of boats, subs, destroyers, carriers, all of that stuff we need to make on our own, because we're a massive country. We're on basically 3 oceans. We're on the Pacific, the Atlantic, and the Arctic. We need our own icebreakers. And aside from that, we need to have our own, honestly, we need to have our own kind of, let's say, Space Force, serious satellites in the sky to be able to help patrol everything all around, right? This is I think where Canada's let's say advantage can come from, because I mean that's what we are. We're just surrounded by water. We have one actual ground neighbor, it's the US, right? So that's it. So it says the federal government would argue that it addresses the first question in the Trudeau-era defense policy, our North strong and free. What a loser. I mean, Blackface did nothing to make anything strong and free, to be honest. He just made us more dependent and weaker. But okay. And the second one will be answered in its long-awaited defense industrial strategy due sometime in the next few weeks. So there's apparently some defense national strategy being built out. I don't really see it, to be honest. All we've been seeing is more procurement talks. Obviously, Canada's military has been degraded drastically, so we have to do military procurement right now in order for us to be able to even defend ourselves in any meaningful way. And that's fine. We have to do it, so we need to do it, right? But if we're going to have an actual defense strategy, we need to systematically be thinking investments into shipyards, investments into building this and that, whether it's going to be tanks, APCs, whatever the defense strategy is that the government decides, we need to build it on our own. And then we need to build the munitions for that on our own. And it's a cyclical thing. Because if we're not doing it on our own, if we can't supply our own military hardware, we'll never be able to actually defend ourselves adequately if it ever comes to a serious breach of our borders, any of them, right? And it says here, but this is Ottawa, which over the last few decades has been a wasteland of pretty policies with good intentions that have struggled to become reality because of an absence of political will, money, or both. And that's 100%. That's 100%. No one wants to be forward thinking. Everything is media oriented. Hey, let's say this for the cameras. Let's say this. Let's talk about it, and then nothing will ever happen. And the more that nothing ever happens, the more your military decays and erodes, and you come up to a wall where you need to be spending hundreds of billions of dollars year on year in order for upkeep, in order for anything, right? And so it says it has been particularly thus in the realm of defense since the end of the Cold War era, where successive federal governments sought to balance their budgets using the largest single discretionary line item in the federal balance sheet, the Department of National Defense. And so this is hilarious because everybody has been, as it says, successive federal governments sought to balance their balance sheets using the national defense budget. They're pulling in more money, federal money, into the civilian body, which is great, sure. But you would think that with all of that excess money coming in, we would have much better infrastructure across the country. I don't know. Our manufacturing base would be amazing. We would be at the forefront of sciences or something, you know what I mean, in the world, but we're not. So where has all of this money gone to? Where has all of this money gone to? I think it's just corruption. Honestly, I think they've just been lining their pockets and they've just been telling us fairy tales. That's my personal opinion. Rarely have the policy debates started from the strategic perspective of where Canada's place is in the world. Exactly. What do we want and what do we need to safeguard our sovereignty and what do we need to do in order to do that? Exactly. And that is exactly key. What's our place in the world? And this is really that wider picture that I've been talking about consistently. Is we're a natural resource nation. We're on three bodies of water, essentially. We're a natural resource nation. There's not a lot of us. 40 million isn't a large population. For this size of a country, I mean, even Russia, 150 million people on that big of a landmass, it's not a lot of people. They could easily have like 2 billion people, no problem. So what is our place in the world? We don't know. Because thus far we've always been a country, a nation that's just kind of like, in the shadows of, Great Britain, obviously because we're a part of the Commonwealth, or, the US, biggest partners and this and that, always shoulder to shoulder, and we should be. But we can't just be little brother all the time. We need, if we want to be known for something, we need to be, we have to develop that somehow, right? And so I want to get down here because this is good. Because Wesley Wark, one of the country's leading experts on national security, said there has been an absence of long-term strategic thinking at the federal level, and many in the defense and foreign policy community are still mired in the fiscal and political limitations of the post-Cold War era, which is now arguably over. Yes, exactly. There's no strategic thinking. I don't think people have really thought about some of the breadth and latitude of the choice that has been opened up. What they have, of course, are many, many shopping lists, whether it's Army shopping lists, Navy shopping lists, space shopping lists, Air Force shopping lists. Exactly. So all they talk about is, things that we need to buy. Let's buy things, right? But that's not a national strategy. That's a band-aid, right? And it says wrapping our heads, and this is I think key right here, wrapping our heads around what's needed to properly secure and defend the Arctic, Work said, will be an excellent starting point for institutions that have been inwardly focused for several years. So this guy, who is one of the country's leading experts on national security, is saying what we need to do is defend the Arctic. And this is what I've been saying too. I 100% agree with him, because this is exactly where everything is going to be focused on. Europe, Canada, and the US are going to be focused on pushing trade into Europe through the Arctic and protecting the Arctic so that we can push influence into the Eurasian landmass. This is why the Arctic is key, because you're going to be able to push influence into the Eurasian landmass. Europe is nothing anymore. It's not a military force of any kind. It's been completely demilitarized since the conflict in Ukraine has started. Completely demilitarized. They have no weapons. They have no ammunitions. They can't do anything. They don't even have the political will to unite around anything either. It's a pretty ununited union, to be honest. And so they're just there as an economic bloc now more than anything. They kind of have some kind of political, not even political weight. They kind of work as in unison, but not really. They're useless, essentially. So this is the US's plan. It's going to be pushing influence through the Arctic. Obviously with the UK to some degree, and then there's Canada. Where do we fit in this whole equation? Because all of this influence is going to be going through Canadian waters. And so anything coming from the back end is also going to be coming through Canadian waters, and this is why our maritime industry needs to be insane. We need to be doing this on our own. Yeah, you know what? And I'm just going to skip to the bottom here, because I believe he said something. Here we go. It says, right now we don't have any shipyards in Canada that are capable of building submarines, and our experience with the national shipbuilding strategy over the last 15 years is it takes some time to build those skills, Topsy said. So this was Vice Admiral Angus Topsy said this. So exactly. So these things take time to build, but you need to start building them now so that we can develop the skills that build these. Look at this thing, looks amazing. I love it. So that we can do it ourselves, right? And then we can actually have a sovereign national defense policy. He says the challenge that we see is that to maintain a submarine industry requires consistent production line, and to be able to build enough submarines in Canada to sustain a production line will be a real challenge, because our requirement in the Canadian Navy is 12 submarines. To maintain a recurring submarine construction capability, Japan has a fleet of 22 boats that they cycle through. So it's a lot of submarines to be able to sustain submarine production. Exactly. We need to be doing this. We need to systematically be doing this. And I just want to skip to the bottom here, because he talks about the World War II, Murray Brewster, and I think this is key, because we had these capabilities when we were a manufacturing nation. When this was a part of our DNA, manufacturing, we were able to pump out everything. It says, during the Second World War, the country started from scratch and produced over 800,000 military transport vehicles, troop carriers, ambulances, whatever, almost 200 Grizzly tanks, and say 2,200 mobile self-propelled guns. Canada's aircraft industry delivered over 16,000 aircraft, including frontline fighters and bombers. And also within a 5-year space, the country's shipyards built over 400 naval vessels, 348 large merchant ships to protect transatlantic supply lines. This is key, where you need military to protect your supply lines, with and without war. And I want to go into this next one because this is, again, this is tied in because now we're looking to join the EU for military procurement. Because so this is grade school politics that the Canadian government is playing with our national defense. This is the way I see it. It's grade school politics. The U.S. is they're not treating us right. They're not treating. You know what? Teacher, he hurt my feelings. He hurt my feelings. I don't want to play with you anymore. That's basically what's going on in the Canadian national defense. That's our national defense strategy. Teacher, he hurt my feelings. And so now we're going to the European Union for military procurement. And I have a serious problem with this for a number of reasons, which we'll get into. But it says Canada has concluded the negotiations to join the European Union's military purchasing fund as the 27-member bloc ramps up defense spending, Ottawa says. So we're supposed to join this Security Action for Europe program. As part of SAFE, Canada will be able to make joint weapons purchases with EU countries, achieve savings through large-scale buying, whatever. So he says, we've been allowed to step into the tent of the European Union. He told reporters, we have negotiated our way into the tent to build this relationship and participate in very large opportunities for procurement. The details in terms of cost percentages are being ironed out. Now, the issue here is there's a fee to get in, right? And so the UK hasn't even joined, and the UK said that they were looking for between £2 to £6.5 billion for the UK to join this EU fund, right? And we still don't have free trade signed with France, so we can't even actually do this technically. We can't technically do this, right? That's one thing. France and Italy, we don't actually have military, any kind of procurement with, right? Yeah. Well, one thing I want to. So here it says, and you can see it's another restriction on Canada doing business in the EU is the fact that 10 countries in the bloc, including France and Italy, have so far not ratified free trade with Canada. This means the non-discrimination, transparency, dispute settlement provisions in the Comprehensive Economic Trade Agreement, CETA, which entered into force in 2017, will not apply uniformly across the 27-member union. And one of the key things here is, this is also another key thing here. So the U.S. International Traffic in Arms Regulations, Canadian exemption permits limited technology transfers to Canada, but explicitly blocks re-exports to third countries like EU members, Professor Hampson said. So this is I want to get into this real quick if you guys don't know what this is. So ITAR stands for the International Traffic in Arms Regulations, and this is a U.S. law that controls every military-related component, technology, blueprint, software that's made in America. And the U.S. decides who you can actually export it to, right? So the U.S. has strict regulations on this, and we can't just go around doing anything. So it doesn't matter if it's designed in Canada, assembled in Canada, tested in Canada, even paid for by Canada. The U.S. is going to control U.S. technology in where it goes, right? And we can't re-export ITAR-controlled materials without U.S. permission, right? So like, for instance, a Canadian drone using an American sensor cannot be sold to France or Germany without U.S. approval. So it's very strict. It's not, this can't be a back and forth thing. We can't share technology, Canadian technology, or in whatever capacity that exists, with the EU without the U.S. giving permission. So it completely overrides our defense manufacturing sovereignty, right? And it basically splits it essentially creates two classes of countries, if you want to put it that way, right? Countries the U.S. trusts and the countries that the U.S. doesn't really trust, right? And in the countries that the U.S. trusts is obviously the U.S., the UK, Australia, that's AUKUS. And Canada's in there with restrictions, strict conditions, sorry. And that's key. So we're not even in the group yet. We're not even in the English-speaking sphere group fully. We're still a junior partner. We're always a junior partner, right? And partners that the U.S. doesn't fully trust is the whole EU, is the EU bloc, and individual EU states. And then everybody else, right? So we're extremely limited to what's going on. And there's actual real life cases where ITAR has actually blocked Canadian deals, like the Canadian satellite components that were blocked from sale to Norway. We had night vision technology that we were going to sell to France that was blocked by ITAR. We had Canadian drone systems was also blocked to the UAE and to Germany. So this is my point. But aside from this, why would you want to procure anything from the European Union right now? The European Union is being systematically deindustrialized since this conflict in Ukraine has started, right? The Russian gas, it hasn't stopped, but it's been being resold at much higher prices. So Germany, the largest industrial base in the EU, it's declining, and you can see it here. Box analyses how the increase in energy prices since autumn 2021 has affected the euro area aggregate industrial production and import volumes. In autumn 2021, gas supplies from Russia to the European Union were cut significantly, contributing to the slow replenishment of gas inventories. So average euro area consumer producer energy prices increased by 49.5% and 93.4% respectively, guys. This is massive. This is massive. So you need to procure things competitively, right? To buy things at competitive prices, energy prices need to be stable. They need to be small. The European Union doesn't have that anymore. The European Union used to get that from Russia. And then they had the whole metals industry and all of that, chemicals. That whole supply chain was based off of Russian cheap gas going into the European Union, which it doesn't have anymore, right? And so not only do they not have that anymore, that cost of production is systematically shrinking their manufacturing base simultaneously. So you want to start procuring things from the European Union, but they can't even supply you to the degree that you want to be supplied. And so, just to kind of go into this again, so this is just this is an actual this is International Trade Administration. Show you guys. So Germany is the largest energy consumer in the European Union, followed by France and Italy. High energy prices have been a challenge for industry and private consumers in recent years. Production in energy-intensive industrial branches has been declining continuously since the beginning of 2022, with industrial output for energy-intensive goods in 2025 remaining roughly 17% lower than pre-2022 levels. They're producing at 17% less than they were 13 years ago. Guys, this is unprecedented. And now they talk down here about how they want to curtail it with green energy and all of that. Yeah, okay. Let's take out our nuclear factories. Let's replace everything with wind turbines and solar panels so that we can build tanks. Come on, guys. Like this is childish thinking. Honestly, it's actually childish thinking. This is just one reason. So to tie into that, sorry, I'm just trying to say too many things at the same time. But they've actually opened up Germany specifically has actually opened up coal plants to supplant the lack of energy that they're getting from their nuclear, because the Green Party shut down all of the nuclear. So they had to open up coal so that they could so that their industry doesn't completely just erode. And just jumping into this, so this article is actually really great. Germany's manufacturing sector has struggled since 2021 due to rising energy costs, weak global demand, and the declining automotive industry. So it's a domino effect. Things are just kind of systematically falling one by one, right? They're talking about trade fragmentation. It's a little bit more civilian, but the civilian applications do relate to military, because if you're not able to produce your own sheet metal, petrochemicals, all of that stuff that actually goes into military procurement for gunpowder, for missile technology, and all of that, then you can't actually systematically produce these armaments to have a national defense strategy, right? And this is why I'm saying the European Union is not. They're basically nothing. They've become like a lower middle player in world politics now because of what they've done. So it says the surge in energy prices, which started at the end of 2021, has severely impacted the euro area manufacturing sector, the output of which has declined below its pre-pandemic level in late 2024. German industry was strongly affected and experienced an even steeper contraction, reducing its output approximately 10 percentage points. Guys, like, look at this. This is the largest manufacturing base in Europe is going through this. Energy crisis. The first rise in energy costs in Europe affected manufacturers more severely in Germany than it did in other euro area countries. Energy intensive industries, those displaying a relatively high natural gas content in their production process, accounting for a similar share of manufacturing in Germany in the area, overall area. So it's anything that's energy intensive. Here we go. Production more in another area, particularly in the chemical sector. Indeed, chemical sector in Germany is more reliant on natural gas as an intermediate input than in any other euro area countries because of its technological characteristics. Due to the chemical industry's significant connections with other sectors, its weakness passed through to the other energy intensive industries, causing a more pronounced decline in production within German energy intensive sectors. This is all related to military. Steel, petrochemicals, gunpowder, it's all tied in there. And the EU is declining fast, drastically. But we're an energy intensive country. We have our own energy. We have everything that we need to manufacture anything we want on our own. But we're systematically not looking for ways to do this on our own, right? We're looking for ways to continually procure. So nowhere in our national defense do we actually talk about these things. And what I want to talk about here, so this is also a key article that I want to discuss as well. And it talks about supply chains. So this is another problem that I have with us procuring from the EU is supply chains. If we actually got into a serious conflict, another global conflict happened, what would happen is we would have to actively buy armaments from the EU or from whomever we've procured this military equipment from in order to continually supply our hardware. Do we really want to do that? Is like that you won't be able to run a conflict, and this has been seen very clearly in the conflict in Ukraine, because the Russians have amazing supply lines and they continually supply their troops. They're fully equipped, and the Ukrainians didn't have anything, and then they had to procure from the EU. Then it came from the US, and then supply lines in NATO actually got very thin. And so what's happening is now the front lines in Ukraine are all cracking because these guys don't have enough weapons to actually fight back. It's literally happening systematically. It's been happening. It happened during Biden. Very systematically, they ran out of certain weapons, and they supplied them with other weapons. And it just kept cycling through. The UK had 20 Challenger tanks in their whole military, and they gave 14 to Ukraine. Germany did a similar thing. Germany was forced to give its Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine. They're basically all gone. This is what supply chains do, and fuel is a part of that as well. So you need large stockpiles, right? We need to build our own stockpiles. If we want to have that sovereignty that we've been talking about, you need to have your own supply lines, right? And so I should probably touched on this earlier though, but this is this article is, I'm not going to get into it just because we've been going at this for a while now. But feel free to have a look at this. This is a great article. The Anatomy of a Fall, Europe's Deindustrialization. Look into it. It's a great article. It really touches on a lot of points on how the EU is actually deindustrializing. What this has looked like. So it's not in a good spot. It's not a good look. You can just look at the wholesale prices of energy around the world, the gas prices. You're not sustainable with this. Like, you're just not. There's no manufacturing there. So why would we start procuring? Big Canadian national defense strategy. Let's procure from Europe, who can't even supply themselves. Anyways, that's all I have for us today, guys. I want to get into making fun of NDP politicians, but I might do that tomorrow. That's all I have for us today. My name is Miloš Krajčnik. This is Canuck News. Stay curious, stay informed, and God bless Canada.
This is Canada. Maple syrup and La Cabot. Kick your ass all hockey season.